Okay. I like number 3. We just sing The Island Within. If you have a song sheet with you, please sing with us. We are just doing the warming up. The Island Within, number 3. Breathing in, I go back to the island within myself. There are beautiful trees within the island. There are clear streams of water. There are birds, sunshine, and fresh air. Breathing out, I feel safe. I enjoy going back to my island. I go back to the island within myself. There are beautiful trees within the island. There are clear streams of water. There are birds, sunshine, and fresh air. Breathing out, I feel safe. I enjoy going back to my island. Okay, next songs we're gonna sing. I have no idea. How about Simple Things? Or okay, Simple Things. Number 5, Simple Things. I get my joy from the simple things coming from the earth. I get my joy from the sun that shines and the water speaks to me. Listen to the wind and listen to the water, hear what they say. Singing hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey. We can't hear you. Singing hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey. I get my joy from the simple things coming from the earth. I get my joy from the sun that shines and the water speaks to me. Listen to the wind and listen to the water, hear what they say. Singing hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey. Singing hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey
spiritual lesson. Okay, we changed because we have practiced the cultivate joy on the band here, so we changed to number 10. And when I rise. There's some part that we do like call and respond, right? So if you feel like you want to call, like you do the call, you want to respond, it's up to you. We sing and respond together.
And when I rise, let me rise, like a bird, joyfully. And when I fall, let me fall, like a leaf, gracefully, without regret. And when I sit, let me sit, like a mountain, solidly. And when I walk, let me walk, like my teacher, mindfully. And when I work, let me work, like a bee, wholeheartedly. And when I lay, let me lay, like a lake, calm and still, reflecting all.
I think that's it for the singing part today. We will save time for the Q&A section this morning. So thank you for practicing singing with us.
morning, respected Thai and dear beloved Sangha. This morning we will have a section of questions and answers. Actually, question and response. We try our best to respond to your question. First of all, I would like to invite our brothers and sisters on this panel. They will introduce themselves for you and also for someone they follow us online. Invite you to, if you have any question, please feel free to come up here and sit with us and ask some question. The question came from your heart, relate with the practice and how you can deal with difficulty in your life. The question in your heart will benefit to a lot of people. And a good question doesn't need to be long. And we will try to respond your question. And of course, the good answer doesn't need to be long either. Now I would like to invite my brothers or my father from my right side to introduce himself.
Good morning, dear teacher, dear community. My name is Brother Khôi. I go by PK, and I'm from Blue Cliff in New York.
Good morning, dear beautiful Sangha. My name is Juliet Hwang, she, her pronouns, and I'm a pediatrician. I work for a large HMO, and I have a special interest in childhood trauma and how it affects the developing mind and how to transform it. I also really enjoy supporting our transgender children and supporting them. And I also work around nourishing resilience in physicians. I also work at the Kaiser Permanente School of Medicine. I'm a coach for medical students, and I teach them about mindfulness and burnout as well to create a new generation of physicians. Thank you.
Dear everyone, gee, that's a hard act to follow. I don't teach at any of those places or do any of those things. My name is Sister Tree Nghiêm, or Sister Tree, and I live and practice here in the Magnolia Grove Monastery. I've been here for 4.5 years. Thank you.
So dear respected Thai and dear beloved Sangha, my name is Brother Pháp Lạc, Dharma Happiness. I stay in Blue Cliff Monastery at upstate New York. Now it's time for us to interact with each other. Please come up here if you have any question. And also, if you don't feel comfortable when you sit here, you can write down on the paper. We can, some of them will send to us. And also, our friends online right now, if you have any question, you can write it down. So the technical team, they will pass to us. Thank you. And we try to save time and please come up here and maybe you can sit next to them. So get online so we can save a lot of time. So thank you. Please all come. Whoever have question, please all come. And you can sit next to each other. Can you pass us a cushion, please? We would like to hear three sound of the bell. So during the sound of the bell, I would like to invite you to practice with us. We practice calm, relax, and the key here is the present moment. Thank you.
Thank you, panelists, for being here to answer our questions or respond. My name is Mary, and I have a question about the beginning a new practice. Sister gave a beautiful presentation yesterday, and it's a very nourishing, helpful practice. It came up in our Dharma sharing yesterday that there are some people for whom the practice seems to not be workable. Maybe people that are in the manas a lot. I don't say this in a superior way. I'm just wondering about when there are people in your family or in your workplace who may be not be very receptive to the practice, what you might recommend. Thank you.
Dear Thai, dear beautiful Sangha, dear Mary, thank you for that really important question. Seeing as I felt I could relate to it, I just jumped in first, and then I get to rest for a while. So I hope the next questions are more difficult. The practice of beginning anew is not only something that you can do bilaterally, but is also a practice that can be done unilaterally. That means that if we have a difficulty with somebody and they know nothing about the practice, or they may not be willing to sit with us to talk, sometimes it takes a while when a difficulty has arisen, to be able to speak about it. And although we are encouraged to resolve it as soon as possible, we need to see, is the time right? Is the other person ready? Am I ready? And that might take days or weeks or months or maybe years. And maybe there's a difficulty that's been going on for years or our whole lifetime. So if we've had wounds from childhood and the pain has accumulated and the relationship with our parents, for example, one or two, has become very strained, or we've become disconnected, or we feel we can't speak to that parent anymore because of the pain, then we can't sit down and go through those 4 steps. But what we can always do, and what people are always receptive to, is step number 1, the flower watering. And that is probably the most important step. And it requires that we look very deeply into the person. We look deeply into ourselves to see what is being touched on, and we look deeply into the other person to try to understand them better. And we also heard that our perceptions are 99% false. So the beliefs that we've internalized about ourselves and about the other person are probably not correct. Maybe there's some truth, but maybe it's only partly true. So on average, we don't know much about the other person, even somebody we've been living with our whole life, or even someone we grew up with. So what we encourage is that we try to find out as much as we can about the other person, about their childhood. Was it happy or was it miserable? What did they experience? How was the relationship with their parents? What was it like at school? What went on between the siblings? What kind of socio-economic background somebody grew up in? Was there a lot of fear? Was there war? Was there death, illness, or loss? Was there poverty, hunger, oppression, displacement, exile? So all of these things impact how we react. And it's good if we know about it to help us understand the other person better. So we can do all of that either by asking, if it's a parent, for example, we can ask them to tell us about their childhood. We can make a list of questions, because I know from my own experience, my mother, when I asked her, she didn't understand the question. So tell me about your childhood was just far too vague. And I had to be more specific, like, well, were you happy as a child? And she said, normal. It was normal. And so I had to probe a little more. And then I said, well, what was the atmosphere like at home? Was it joyful? Was it heavy? And she said, well, it wasn't fun because my father and my brother, they were both away at the war. So what do you think? And I realized, oh my gosh, I had never realized that she grew up afraid she'd never see her father again or her brother, that they might get killed at war. I'd never understood the impact of war on my grandfather, my uncle. My uncle took his life later in life, so there was a lot of suffering that I was unaware of. And it helped me to open my heart towards my mother, to understand her better, to stop blaming her for all her shortcomings and all the ways she wasn't behaving the way I'd hoped she would. So finding out about our ancestors, starting with our parents, is really important. And if it's not a family member, it's the same process for the other person. Find out about their childhood, their schooling, their education, the environment they grew up in. We can ask other people for help to do that. What do they know about them? So we get a more balanced view, and that's really important. Not just to have a whole long list of negative, everything we don't like about them and all the terrible things they've said and done. So we need to balance it out with the more positive qualities we see. Can I just ask you, are you referring to anyone in particular? Parents. So in my case, I wasn't aware that it was actually a great gift to give birth to me. I'd often thought, I didn't ask you to give birth to me. Why do I have to be grateful for that? And when I came to Plum Village and discovered the practice of looking deeply, I started to see, wow, my mother carried me 9 months in her womb and did her best to look after me, and then went through the ordeal of childbirth and didn't let me die and fed me and gave me shelter. My parents gave me education. They did everything that they could for me. So that helped me have a more balanced view, and that's essential for being able to see the positive in the other person. And then we can start to express it, either in person, by sharing what we're grateful for, all the good we see in them, or if that's too difficult, we can do it in writing. I started to send my mother birthday cards and Christmas cards, and then a few in between, expressing my gratitude for all the things that she'd done for me. And at the same time, and all the positive qualities I saw in her, and I realized the positive qualities in me didn't come from nowhere. I received them from my parents or through my parents. And suddenly I could see the positive in them. So I could express that and thank them for it. And I did this for a year or 2 years. And at the same time, I expressed my regret. I could see more clearly all the ways I had been unskillful, all of my unreasonable expectations, all of my demands. One nun once asked me, well, what was it like to live with you when you were a teenager? And I suddenly had so much compassion for my mother. Yeah, it was just all turned around, a completely different perspective, and I felt so sorry and so remorseful for the pain and the suffering. I mean, can you imagine coming home every day to a really moody teenager and who's in a bad mood and who's angry with you before you've even done or said anything? So I apologized for that. And she didn't know the practice. She didn't know what I was doing. But it had an effect. Her positive seeds were being watered, and they started to sprout. And after 2 years, without me ever talking about any difficulty, our relationship had healed completely. One day I put down the phone and I realized, wow, I feel okay. I'm not going to cry the whole night. I'm not in despair. And all I could feel was love. Love, warmth, care, and gratitude. And so by the time she died, which was just shortly after that, I was able to really fully be there for her, and in a way that my brother wasn't able to because he hadn't done that work. So this is just a really good example for me of how we don't need to wait for the other person to do anything. We just do the inner work ourselves. We do the looking deeply. We get a more balanced view of ourselves, right? I wasn't a little saint. That victim that I thought I was really a kind of, I don't know, not quite a tyrant, but really unpleasant to be around in those years. Very ungrateful and very ignorant. And in my ignorance, I caused a lot of suffering to my mother and others. So I hope that answers your question, and for others as well. Thank you.
I asked our friend here to apply the beginning anew right now to her parents. You can look at the camera, and you will do beginning anew with your mother or your father. You can tell 3 things you gratitude to, and 1 thing you would like to approve in the future.
You all really know how to put someone on the spot, huh? I guess I did it to myself. Okay. I'm watering seeds first for both of my parents collectively. Okay. I have tears of gratitude because I wouldn't be here without my parents. I mean, obviously, but I mean here, you know? I grew up in a spiritual tradition, and it wasn't Buddhism, but this feels very much at home to me. And I'm very grateful for them rearing me in that way. And I can also thank my parents for my career because they're very giving, caring people. So Mom and Dad, thank you for teaching me compassion. One more. I'm drawing a blank. I want to say being helpful, helping others. Okay, what's next? Regret. Oh, improve for the future, okay. Clarification, brother. How I'm gonna be different in the future with them, or what I would like from them? Or is there interbeing in that answer? Oh, how will I change? Yes, okay. Well, I'm going to water their flowers. I've really heard what you had to say, Sister Tree, and you know, I send them cards and I do a lot of nice things for them, but sometimes in my heart when I'm looking at those cards at Walgreens, I'm thinking, nope, not this one, not this one. And so instead, yeah, I'm gonna really focus on the exercise you've just had me start with, because there's a lot of love and gratitude. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, this is a time hugging meditation. I think this is
Would you like a hug? Oh, absolutely.
they will practice hugging meditation. Yeah. Thank you. So the hugging, we would like to tell you we're always there for you. Every time you need us, come and practice with us. So thank you.
My question is about trauma. I'm a first responder in a small community with a lot of tourism as well. And we respond to every kind of medical or trauma event that you can imagine. And we don't get paid, we're volunteers. So I've always felt that what comes back to me, not that there needs to be, but I get great joy in bringing the peace and sense of safety to someone in what may be one of the worst moments of their life. And being able to hold the door between life and death. Sometimes in really scary situations, and sometimes not with good outcomes. And we try to not take that home with us. Everyone in this room understands that regardless of what part of being a caregiver, first responder, medical professional, or other caring person, how these traumatic events can stay with you. And my question is about, it's not a well-formulated question, it's about how to use the practice, not so much in the moment of the traumatic event that I insert myself into, but very much afterward. I'm pretty good with keeping the mindfulness actually and holding that safety in the moment, in the time frame of the caring. But then there's home, and there's back to life, and there's back to work. If anyone has thoughts on using the practice to better release the fears, the stress, the trauma that we become a part of.
What was your name again? Catherine. First of all, thank you for your amazing work and your service. My jaw dropped when you said you were a volunteer and that you're willingly offering your really divine presence at really, really scary moments. All your patients are really, really lucky to have you by their side. Are you familiar with the work of Peter Levine? So, Peter Levine has created a field called somatic experiencing, and basically says that everything lives in the body. And so just like you're describing, trauma lives in the body unless we resolve it and it integrates. And if you look at animals in the wild, you know, what happens if a gazelle is chased by a lion? They run real fast. They have adrenaline, cortisol, epinephrine coursing through their veins. And then when the threat passes, they lie down in the field and they shake. They shake, and then there's a down regulation of the nervous system and it comes down. What happens with a lot of us in these situations, whether it's as a first responder or just a layperson, when we're exposed to trauma, our nervous system gets activated. It can go into fight or flight or even freeze. And the problem is we get stuck there and we don't know how to bring our nervous system back down to safety and regulation. And that's where the Sangha comes in. So there are different things you can do. You can, for me, when I go home, I take a walk with my dog. My dog actually regulates me. I hug my dog. I see my kids. I hug them. I walk, and that helps downregulate my nervous system. When I have a lot of grief, I do touching of the earth. I do touching of the earth, and I call in my ancestors because I can't do it by myself. And when I'm overwhelmed, I come here. And I surround myself with the Sangha, with the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, and all our ancestors, so that my body remembers I'm safe. I'm safe. And it is just ingrained in our practice, which is so beautiful. And I invite you to figure out what helps your body feel safe, what helps it come back down, regulate. And because trauma is often created in relationship with people, oftentimes it has to be resolved in relationship with people. And so there are lots of body things that you can do as well. There's something called tension releasing exercises by David Berceli. A lot of people dance. A lot of people do yoga. A lot of people there are lots of different things, and I invite you to explore and what feels best and comfortable in your body. I hope that was helpful.
So I would like to add just a little bit about that too. I want to ask about the spiritual life and also the plus ancestor. They have a root. One root is special. It's a special, like spiritual life that came from our ancestor. And also the plus ancestor. If you, like Sister said, if you touch the earth, you reconnect with your ancestor, and you are not alone. They always there for you in the spiritual life. And if you can reconnect with that root in you, two root in you, that means that person, the patient you help, they also have the ancestor with them. they also have the spiritual life with them. That if that person, you see, he or she passed away, it not at an end. Sometimes or something will happen after that. They always have the support from their ancestor. And we also always have support by our ancestor. But the thing different is because we know how to practice. That's why our root very strong. We root very strong. And you see the tree strong because they rooted on the land very strong. And us too. The way we practice, we reconnect with our ancestor. So they always there to support us. That's one little point I would like to ask. So thank you for your question.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Elizabeth. Thank you, Mary, for your bravery. It helps me be brave. The question that I have for you is about loneliness. I work as a trauma therapist in private practice, and I live alone, and I have my companion is myself and my two dogs. And one of the deepest desires of my heart is to experience true love and romantic partnership. But I grew up in a very dangerous and suffering family, so I don't know healthy love. I don't have a model for that. And sometimes seeking relationship from, that feeling of loneliness leads me to pick people who help me recreate the dynamics of my family of origin. And I know my own intellectual therapist thinking best answer to this question, what I might say to a client, but I would be so happy to receive responses about the spiritual solution. Or responses, not solution.
Dear Thai, dear community, dear Elizabeth, I am no expert in this field, but I will try my best to offer inputs, and then hopefully the rest of the panels can add. Loneliness is a big thing that we all experience throughout our lives, or certain parts of our lives. As a practitioner, I practice true love, which is the four aspects: the loving kindness, compassion, joy, and inclusiveness. And these are all sounds very grand. And and they are called immeasurable minds of love. And they should be applied to ourselves first. I think the first step is to learn about these 4 elements of true love and apply them into our own lives. Are we kind enough to ourselves? Are we compassionate enough to ourselves? Are we able to cultivate joy for ourselves? Are we able to practice inclusiveness? The other aspect of that is are we able to practice letting go, being at ease? We grow up being trained that we're lacking, we're not complete, so we need to seek, we need to look for someone or something to feel complete. But the Buddha's teaching tells us differently, that we are born complete already. So there's no need to look for or search for. But of course, we did not grow up Buddhist, so even those of us who grew up Buddhist, we still feel like we need to look for something and search for something, and that's okay. What I'm trying to allude at is that when we're able to practice in such a way and to feel okay and to accept ourselves the way we are, even with our loneliness, then something can happen or not, and that's okay too. If I always feel like I am only half, then I am told that I need to look for the other half to feel one. But if I live my life in such a way that I am one, and if I'm able to meet another one, that makes 2. That's better. I feel. And should that doesn't work out, I'm still one. I'm still complete. So we're not looking for something to complement us. We're looking for something to enrich ourselves. So that means that we have to start at the foundation that I am okay already, and whatever comes, whoever comes, that's like bonus. And I know it's easier said than done. And as monastic, we already chose the lifestyle of celibacy, so we are alone anyway. But we're still able to practice those 4 elements, being in community, and so it all starts with ourselves. And when I'm able to somehow, to a certain extent, able to practice those 4 elements, and it radiates out, and whatever radiates out usually attracts the same energy. I do believe in that, and so it's not maybe we can switch our attitude. Instead of seeking, looking, we're just radiating what we want to have, and we'll see what comes. Maybe the panels can add in. Thank you.
Now, I would like another question from our friends from online, please. They are already ready for that, so thank you.
Dear brothers and sisters, dear Sangha, I'm sorry, I just left for a moment. Were you about to touch the bell, or should I ask my question? My question is, just to give some context. I just spoke with a sister a few hours ago. She was very kind in giving me guidance. However, I still after I had the talk, another question arose, which is very important also to be able to heal. And I hope that many can benefit from my question. My question is, could you please help me understand how can I forgive the decision that my mom and my dad took. This was 14 years ago when they decided that I should have an abortion, and I did. And this decision that I didn't take because I was not. I was in a crisis psychologically, and they told me lies about this. They said some things that weren't true. And I understand that their conditions, as our dear teacher says, were difficult, and I made them difficult because they were in that situation because of me. But I ask you your help to understand how can I forgive this without justifying that decision was wrong, that decision led to the abortion of my child and their grandchild, and this is very difficult for me to accept, to understand. And that is my question. Priscilla, bowing out.
Dear friend, I'm just going to rephrase what I think I understood from your question because the sound is not very clear here. Is that okay? So what I think I heard you say is that 14 years ago you were in a psychological crisis, and at that time your parents made the decision on your behalf that you should have an abortion. And they told you some things that were not true, apparently, and now you don't know how to forgive them for doing that. Is that correct?
That were not true is that they told me that I wasn't pregnant, that it was a cyst, but I was pregnant. And just for you to understand the question better. And yes, that is correct.
So you did. You didn't know you were pregnant at the time, but you found out afterwards.
Said positive. The doctor, the psychiatrist told me I was, but my parents, they couldn't accept this. So in the hospital, they told me, you have a cyst. We have to go and take it out. But it wasn't a cyst. It was my baby. And this is what happened.
So I think we're all digesting. I think we need a little time to reflect before answering. So dear friend, maybe I can start and hopefully someone else can continue. The first thing I can say is that I'm really feeling your pain right now. That's a very, very difficult situation to have been in the first place, and difficult to process the grief of losing your child because it's mixed with so many other feelings. So having an abortion or a miscarriage or losing a child is already so challenging. And now your experience was mixed with feelings of betrayal from the people who gave birth to you. From my own experience, I haven't had experience with abortion or losing a baby, but from my experience with really being resentful towards my parents and holding them accountable and blaming them, didn't help me. The blaming was an attempt to relieve my suffering, but in fact it just increased my suffering. So that I didn't understand certain very important decisions my mother made, and I held it against her all my life until what you heard at the beginning, till I was able to reconcile. I was already in my 50s, was almost 50, was late 40s. So I carried that blame with me, which poisoned me. It poisoned all of my life. Not what she had done, but the way I was responding to it. And then I was adding to it with my thoughts, with my anger, with my rage, my fury. And it was when I came to Plum Village that I learnt my parents did the best they could with the conditions they had. And everything they did, they thought it was in my best interests. And all the ways they reacted were because they didn't know how to do it any better. So I think it's similar for many of us. Each situation is different. Not everybody has had your situation, but they've had other situations that are difficult to heal from. And in my experience, reconciling with the imperfection of my parents and accepting my own imperfection, my own shortcomings, and to see that I too am always doing the best I can with the conditions I have. So I may not agree with the decisions that my mother made or my father made, but I know they were not able to make better decisions at that time, and that everything they did, they thought they were doing it for my own good. I once asked my father why he didn't say goodbye to me when my parents separated. I was 10. And I thought he didn't say goodbye to me because he didn't love me or he didn't care about me. And when I was in my 40s, so 30 years later, I asked him, why didn't you say goodbye? And he said, I thought it would be too difficult for you and for me, and that it would be easier if I didn't. And I understood that he was not able to have an emotional parting. That was too difficult for him to feel those strong emotions of losing his child. So the way it was for him was different to the way it was for me. And I know I don't want to compare these two experiences because each experience is felt differently, and I'm not comparing the gravity of those two things. I only want to open the door to the possibility that your parents felt they were doing the right thing for you. And even though you may feel that was not the right thing and you felt betrayed and hurt, they still felt they were making the best decision for you. So I really hope that you can take care of your own grief, the grief at losing the child, the grief of feeling betrayed by your own parents, and open a space in your heart for the possibility that they were just doing their best at the time with the situation as it presented. I think that's all I can say for now. And they would also be devastated to know how much you suffered because of that decision. They only want what's good for you. They just want your happiness, your health, and your well-being. And it would distress them enormously to think that for 14 years you've been carrying a very heavy burden because of a decision that they made. So I'll bow out here, and I hope that possibly someone can add something. Thank you.
Dear beautiful sister, thank you for your courageous question. What comes up for me is quite anger and rage for just the history of women and our autonomy over our own body taken away by people outside of us in the system. There's an unfortunate history of forced sterilization of Black and brown women in this country and in other parts of the world. But not having autonomy over our body is quite a great trauma. And just like Sister Juliet mentioned, there's the betrayal of the parents. You expect them to take care of you, but there is this betrayal of trust. And then layered on top of that is the medical system. And then on top of that is the actual invasive procedure. And so my heart goes out to the young woman 14 years ago who suffered greatly and is still holding the trauma in your body. And I'm wondering what it's like to give a little bit more spaciousness for all your feelings, for perhaps there's anger, perhaps there's rage, perhaps there's resentment. All those feelings are welcome in a really horrible situation. And I encourage you to ask for help. This is not something that anyone can resolve alone. That I'm sure there are lots of women who have been in similar situations or can really support. But I think it's really important for you to regain your own autonomy in some way. And sometimes by holding resent, just like Sister Chunim said, I think someone said when you're resentful towards someone, it's like giving them poison, but you're actually drinking it yourself. So just take care of yourself. And I'm wondering if we introduce the concept of no coming, no going, if the little one is still here, and how the little one is manifesting, and where the little one has continued, and where you will travel and continue traveling on your journey of healing, of resolving something quite great and grave. And I'm also aware that this question may have touched some seeds in some people in this room, and I feel it, and I recognize it. And just know that we are all here together, practicing, breathing, honoring, and grieving. Yeah, sometimes the practice is hard. And just allowing spaciousness for all those feelings to just come. You're all welcome here. So I just want to honor everyone in this moment.
I'd just like to offer another approach. Growing up in my household, I am the youngest of 8, but I remember in my home there was an altar, and I remember asking my mother, who is that for? We have an altar for the Buddha, an altar for our grandparents, and there is this little altar. And my mom said, that could have been your elder sibling. So I didn't ask further what happened, but on the altar there's only a vase of flowers and sometimes a fruit, a place of fruit, and an incense burner. But I felt like I did not know this person, but this person is a part of our family. And that was my mother's way of coping, of honoring. So I would suggest that if you like, perhaps you can do a similar thing. Have a space in your home, maybe a small table, and have a fresh vase of flowers for the person that could have been with you, and just to honor that being. And I think it could help a lot. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
This Sangha, all questions so far very, very beautiful. And we don't know we have enough time for that. Can you stay with us until midnight?
Hi, everyone. My name is Jeannie. I'm feeling kind of vulnerable because my question is only half formed. But it still felt important to come here and ask, to say this. I have the straightforward part of the question, and I'll ask it in a minute. But I want to say a little bit about myself first. It may help me to figure out the unasked part of the question. I serve as a psychologist at a free medical clinic that is 45 minutes from here in a place called Clarksdale, Mississippi. It's in the Delta. About 40% of the population has lived below the poverty line for 2 decades there. About 80% of the population is African American. As you all know, the Delta is a place where the history of slavery is in the soil in a very big way. And the vast majority of my patients are African Americans. And as we spoke of yesterday, there are many people who are not being served by people who look like them. And I'm one of those people, serving people who don't look like me. And I grew up with a lot of privilege as a white person in upstate New York. So my original question is quite straightforward, but like I said, it feels like there's more that I don't really quite have formed. Maybe you all can help me. The straightforward question is, before the chanting in the last couple days, a prayer has been said which requests that we relinquish superiority and inferiority complexes and equality complexes. And I don't understand what an equality complex is and why we would want to relinquish them.
So, dear respected Thầy, dear beloved Sangha, I try to answer this very easy question. Let's talk a little bit about Plum Village culture, Plum Village tradition. All the practice we base on the building a Sangha. And in order to flow as a river, so we have to put down our ego. Because the self, the ego, always compare. Is it good? Is it not good? No, I'm equal with that. No. I'm better at that. Just always. So we practice. That means we're not perfect, but we are on the way to practice So our ego become a river, become a one of the river. Like Thầy, he used the image very beautiful. He say water and milk. When you drop one water to the milk, you see the water and milk, they, how do you say, they blend to each other. If you drop one oil to the milk, you can see right away the drop of milk. The practice that here the same, the practice to help us to make our ego like minimize and joy with the river of the Sangha. We flow with the Sangha and we don't compare. That's our practice. And that's why when we chanting, let the chanting penetrate into ourselves without any resistance. I don't want it, or I don't like that chanting, or why I'm here, or why I have to sit like that. All kind of resistance, we will put it down, open our heart, so we can penetrate all the chanting. Let the chanting like a rain, the water, our good seed in us. The chanting outside will help you to cultivate the seed of Bodhicitta in you, the mind of love, the energy of awakening in you. That is our practice. I hope it's...
Thank you for that, brother. The notion of letting go of inferiority complexes and superiority complexes makes sense to me, but I still don't understand what we mean by an equality complex and why we want to let that go too. I don't understand what it is I'm trying to let go of, I guess is what I'm saying still. I understand the general process you're describing, but I don't understand what an equality complex is that I'm trying to, maybe I'm getting too in my head and I should just let it go.
I'd like to thank my brother for sharing. I just want to add my understanding from another angle. In Buddhism, there is the teaching on two truths. One is the ultimate truth or the ultimate dimension, and one is the historical dimension or the conventional truth. And when we hear a line that says, practice to overcome those three complexes, that's the expression for the ultimate truth. That is something that is a reality, but since we don't realize it, we're practiced to realize it. It's always been there. But that doesn't mean that once you realize it, you do away with the historical dimension. You still live and practice in the historical dimension. And it's a practice of non-self. When we're able to transcend those three complexes, you actually enter with everything. And there's no need to feel superior to, inferior to, or equal to anyone, because we all enter are. So that is sort of like the reality, but also the aim that we want to, if there's something to attain, that we want to attain. And a good example I always use to remind me of this is there is a sunrise and a sunset. That's this historical dimension, because we're on Earth, so we see that. But science tells us that there's no such thing, because we actually revolve around the sun, so it appears as though there's a sunset. So we evolved around the sun. That is equivalent to the ultimate dimension. And sunrise and sunset is the conventional, the historical. But knowing that there's actually no sunrise, it doesn't stop us from enjoying the sunrise, right? Or the sunset. We suffer when we get caught in the sunrise and the sunset. So we suffer when we get caught in a self. I'm superior to, I'm equal to, I'm less than somebody. But once we understand that it's okay to be superior, it's okay to be inferior, it's okay to be equal, but we don't need to identify and suffer because of them. I hope that helps.
I would like to add something. I've struggled with that often. One way to interpret it is equality complex as, oh, I'm colorblind. We're all the same. I don't see anything. But we live in a historical dimension where actually our society is built on racism, right? And systemic oppression. And in order for us to achieve liberation, we're not free until we're all free. And that means honoring the most oppressed in our society. And my dear great friend Kayla pointed out, for the first mindfulness training, reverence for life. You know, we need to have reverence for bugs, animals, plants, and minerals, but also for Black lives. Because, like you mentioned, so many things affect our Black and brown communities so much more. So I think it's so important that you are aware of your white privilege. And I'm also, I want you to be aware that there's a part of our Sangha that is social justice oriented, who are trying to address these real world issues and working towards liberation for all. And that's the Arise Sangha, A-R-I-S-E. And they also have 5 contemplations on the 5 mindfulness trainings that are oriented towards social justice and engaged Buddhism. And I am part of a wave in our Sangha where we're trying to invite more Black and brown people of color into our community, because it is disproportionate. Our Sangha, our Mahasangha, doesn't necessarily reflect the population of our communities. And so I think it's important to realize that we live in a historical dimension, and yet we're all searching for the ultimate dimension. And it's important to see the reality and to remember that race is a social construct as well. So, and I can go into a very long conversation about all of this. And for those of you who are interested, I facilitate a BIPOC OI aspirant group. So there are waves of a new generation of practitioners with this consciousness.
Thank you all very much. I realize my unasked question was, can you help me with this? Because this is really hard. And thank you for mentioning some other things happening here.
So, dear friends, look like we have only 2 minutes left. I don't know what to do. We continue for one more question. 2 more questions. Are you not hungry? No. So how about 2 more questions? Okay. First of all, I have to say sorry for the one online. I know we have another question from online, but we have 2 more here. And I'm sorry, you can ask that question to your Dharma sharing group in this afternoon. Thank you for your understanding. Now, we will listen one sound the bell and we will continue. So I want you to promise me only one question, okay?
I promise. Dear community, thank you for this opportunity to engage in this way. And just in the interest of, being not attached even to my views, please feel free to correct any of what I'm saying. So after interacting, I think, with all of the lovely healthcare providers and professionals here, I've been so touched hearing all of these stories, and so many about burnout, so many about the suffering that they endure, and I think one of the things that also stayed with me a lot was how so many individuals take on the burden of blame and guilt of a system that is so broken and letting people down every day. And I work in health policy and social work. Actually, I work with some researchers at the Kaiser Permanente Medical School as well. So I'm quite familiar with how this system continuously kind of, lets people down. And my question is, as practitioners here of the Dharma, what is the role? And I think Dr. Hugh also kind of spoke to this need for systemic change, and I think you were also just alluding to some of that just now. What can we do as a practice to engage not just in the change of the individual, which is so important, but what is the conversation between that individual change and systemic change, and how can we have that, and how can we bring our practice into that? Thank you.
So you want her to answer for you? She will answer for you.
What was your name again? Roshan? Rushan. I just want to say you just made my day. I can talk about this forever. I used to teach mindfulness for Kaiser Permanente, but I felt like the physicians and the nurses felt like it was their fault that they were burnt out, and that mindfulness was a bandage. And then they would feel better, and then they would go back into the clinic and into the hospital, and then it would happen all over again, and it didn't feel good. So I don't have the answers, but what I'm hoping for is more people wake up, right? Realize we don't have to stay stuck in this system. And there's a calligraphy in Deer Park, happy doctors change the world, right? So Thai always says, go back and take care of yourself, nourish yourself. And when you are full and you are armed with the power and the wisdom of all the bodhisattvas and all our ancestors, what happens if we are all spiritual warriors and we go out? And what if we look at this system as another organism, right? That's just massive and acting out and doing horrible, harmful things. What do we do with a young child who's acting out and doing harmful things? We make them stop, right? And we put boundaries on it and say, and help them change. So how can we treat this system as something that has gotten out of control? It is harming people, and it is our job as practitioners to prevent harm. It is harming people on so many levels, on so many generations. So how do we nourish ourselves so that we can go out there and not alone? We have to do it together. And how do we embrace the system on all sides, right? Just like Thai says, you hold a crying child. Hold it, help it, and help it transform. But we must be the visionaries. We must be able to dream different possibilities. And I trust that in our collective consciousness that we have the answers. One Buddha is not enough. We all must manifest our true bodhisattva nature, and we do that by practicing by sharing, by talking with each other. And that's what I dream about. I don't know, I'd love to hear what you dream about. I'd love to hear what everyone dreams about, because that's what it starts with. Yeah. Juliet bowing out.
Hi, I'm Rebecca. Thank you, Sangha, for inviting me to ask my question. So I'm a therapist, and I work with a lot of trauma, and I also work and live alone, and I experience a lot of loneliness. And I think because of those two things, I have some feelings that are, they're difficult to handle. And I engage in some unmindful consumption. And in different ways, food and, like TV and things like that. And I was hoping to gain some insight in different ways to approach that.
Look like my turn to answer. So, dear respected dear Sangha, thank you for your question. First of all, I would like to, in the past, I asked myself why I have to practice. And how the practice is help me to build or to rebuild or to cultivate my peacefulness, my space, my solid. So when I practice, I realize I need everything. Everything. I need the air to breathe. I need my brothers and sisters to support me. I need my plus ancestors to support me. I need car to go to shopping. And sometimes I need a TV to support me too. We have the TV here. And I know sometimes when we facing our difficulty, if we already try everything, wholeheartedly, I try, but still look like not going well, why don't you turn on the TV and watch the TV? And I did that. Watch TV, it doesn't mean I will attach with the TV or I will attach with what I'm watching, but I try to minimize the thinking. I use the TV, the film or anything on the TV, to let myself less thinking, and I can breathe with that until I go back to my practice. Like I said, I need everything. That means I need the practice. And also I need the Sangha to support me. The practice will help me how I can recognize the difficulty, and I have to aware and accept this is my difficulty. I have to accept that. So even that difficulty very make me very suffer, but I don't run away. I need to recognize that and using the mindfulness to transform that kind of difficulty. In order to doing that, every day, every time we hear the bell, we have to stop. That's why we create the environment to support us, to generate, to cultivate the energy we call mindfulness. Because mindfulness is the energy to help us to recognize what happened inside of us and around us. If I can cultivate that energy and I practice every day, I will build up that kind of energy. So when I face in difficulty, I use that energy to embrace that kind of difficulty, that kind of suffering. And when I look at our teacher, when I look at Thầy, every time when he walk mindfully, because he wants to build, to generate, to cultivate his mindfulness. And when he sit, he also sit very beautifully and very mindfully. Everything he did, one purpose is cultivate the energy of mindfulness. So that's why his mindfulness is very strong. He can facing and embrace very easily, difficulty very easily. And that is the point. I think that's the key for me to follow that practice. I need to cultivate that every day. And one thing important is when we practice, you are aware you need to cultivate mindfulness. If you're doing right, the mindfulness will help you to have peaceful, joyful, and happiness. That's the first step when you practice. You need to cultivate the happiness every day. Every day. And if you can do in that, you know you will go far. And if you can do it, that means you know how to use the energy to embrace the difficulty. We don't wait until we facing difficulty and then we go back to ourselves and we practice. That's too late. And that's why the trauma let us know the trauma is this, a suffering. The trauma is difficulty. We not afraid of that, but we need to cultivate the mindfulness so we can deal with that. That's the key. And that's why you see we create environment to help us every time. We hear the bell, we stop. We hear the phone ring, we stop. We stop a lot so we can go back ourselves to cultivate. Bring your mind back to your body to cultivate that kind of energy. So use that energy to embrace difficulty when you facing that difficulty. And again, this tradition, we talk a lot about happiness. When you go to the YouTube, when you turn on Thầy Dharma talk, you will hear Thầy talk about how to cultivate, how to recognize a condition of happiness. A lot. That's our Dharma seal. Because out there, we already have a lot of difficulty. We already suffering. We already have despair. We don't need more. So that's why when we practice, the first step we practice is recognize the happiness condition around us. Looks simple, but difficult. And the calligraphy Thầy wrote is breathe and smile. That is the key of the practice for us. Because when you breathe, you smile. That smile, you smile for yourself. Because you are the beautiful one. And also when we smile to our habit energy. The habit energy, we the one who create that. When we look at that and we smile with that, that means we are already mindfulness about that kind of energy. We know how to transform that kind of energy. It's all energy. That's why we need another energy we call mindfulness to embrace that, to transform that. And that's what we did the last few days. Try to stop, try to breathe, so we can cultivate the energy we call mindfulness. That's the key. And another Dharma seal of Plum Village is Dharma seal of here and now. Very powerful. If you really dwelling in the here and now, you will recognize we have a lot of condition, happiness condition around us. And again, one more thing, don't do it alone. We do with our Sangha. We need support from our Sangha. And that's why we are here. We practice together. So I hope my answer is okay for you. Yeah. So thank you. I know I throw everything in there, so you have a choice. Dear Sangha, I would like to thank all brothers, my brothers and our sister here, to give wonderful response to all the answer, and also thanks everybody to have raised the question, a very beautiful question, very difficult question too, sometimes complicated too, but we did well. Do we? Yeah, thank you. And also for thanks for your listening. And now we would like to invite you to sit beautifully. We will listen 3 sounds of the bell. Again, during the 3 sounds of the bell, I invite you to practice with us. When you breathe, you say it in silently, calm. And when you breathe, you say silently to relax, calm, relax.
Wow, that was such a very enriching and touching session. Thank you to the other Dharma teachers for